This is the Extra Point Podcast. During this podcast, we will dive deeper into our Sunday teaching and share practical next steps for your faith journey. Now, let's kick off the Extra Point.
Hey, welcome to the Extra Point. I'm Cheryl Ross, the Next Steps in Discipleship pastor here, and I'm with Scott Beha, our lead pastor. And before we go any further, I want to make sure that if you haven't liked or subscribed to this podcast, that you go ahead and do so. That way you don't miss out on any new content. So this week, we're going to dive deeper into your Sunday teaching that was one of our quarterly services that is for our For the Future campaign.
Yep.
For new listeners, can you share a little bit about what that is and why we are doing it?
Yeah, so For the Future is our initiative where we were trying to pay off the mortgage on our building and property, which when we began was a little like $1,050,000. Which is a debt that the church has carried for a long time. And when they incurred that debt, it was definitely necessary. It helped them to move from where they were landlocked and they couldn't grow. And then they came up here and they built this facility and they were growing and they needed more space, so it allowed for further expansion in that way. But then over the last probably 10 to 15 years, they just didn't make much progress on paying it off. You would have thought after 15 years of payments they would be about halfway done, and that just wasn't the case. The church had gone through some really tough financial times to where they weren't making progress on paying their debt off. And so when I was hired as the lead pastor, I told the elder board this was something that was going to have to be addressed because I didn't want to spend my 30 years here, if that's what the Lord has for us, just paying a debt off.
Right.
I want to be able to do ministry. We already do ministry on a shoestring budget, with the majority of, our budget being tied up in fixed expenses and not necessarily ministry type things, which is unfortunate because we want to go and do ministry.
Yeah.
But the thing the Lord has just repeated to me over and over again is you can't get to go do anything in the future till you deal with the past.
Right.
And it's not like anyone made necessarily mistakes in the past. Everyone was just trying to do whatever they could to keep the church going in the direction that it was, because Southridge has been in a good place for a long time, with people coming to Christ, people being called to ministry, being baptized, and all that. And so I think there was just different focuses, and God has this is the one. I had a different focus for the first probably 5 years of being in lead ministry here, where I thought, well, we'll just keep the expansion track going, and it became really, really obvious that that's just not possible, carrying around the debt that the church has. It's much like any personal family, you have a lot of debt, but you got stuff that you want to do, you don't get to do it. You got to go take care of the things that happened before that. You got to go wipe that debt out, and then you can be free to go and say yes to other opportunities.
Right.
And so we've seen almost $220,000. Well, this before yesterday, $217,000 have come in.
Yeah.
Since October, we've paid like $211. So there's like $6,000 that still needs to be sent, and that has brought the amount down from $1,050,000 down to like $866 roughly. So you can see, even though we've paid to $211, it hasn't come down by $211 because we paid just in. This is why this is such a critical thing for us to do. Just think, from October to June, we paid $26,000 in interest just for this building. What in the world could $26,000 do in our community?
Oh yeah, a whole lot.
The stuff that we could have done with $26,000, but we have to take care of this, and then we can get to that.
Yeah.
And so it's at like 866. We had roughly 40,000 come in yesterday. In service, there's probably another couple thousand or so online. So we're going to see that number under 850, and hopefully by the end of the year, it really needs to be under 800, because we have an interest rate increase coming in March. It's going to shoot our interest rate up from the 5% that it's at now to over 8%. And so to keep the monthly payment where it's at, that amount's going to have to be under 800,000.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to accelerate our giving in that way. I know we have at least one more large gift coming later this year, hopefully more. And so for me and my family, we're trying to accelerate as much as we can before March to really help make sure that when that interest rate hits, it's not going to be because at 8%, we're going to be fighting a big uphill battle. Thinking at 5% over 9 months, we paid $26,000.
Yeah.
And you take that to 8%, you take that over the next 2 years, we're going to have to really be out giving at a pace that's going to be enormous, which is why the more we can get that principal down early, the less interest we're ultimately going to pay in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got some fundraisers and stuff coming up next year, too. That'll help give us some large chunk progress on it, but we just got to keep going. We've had a good start to it. As with anything, momentum starts to wane because it's difficult.
Yeah.
And once all those big pledges have been paid, then there's not those big chunks anymore.
Right.
Now it's more like it's just the faithful grind of the person giving $30 a week, $50 a month. It's just going to be that grind for the next 3 years. And I'm thankful for every gift, however it is. But we have bit off a huge undertaking with this, and it's going to take the full force of the church, as well as God adding to our church people strategically to help us undertake this.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well. So I'm excited for it, though, because it opens up so many opportunities in the future that we'll get to see really remarkable things happen.
Yeah.
Whenever we're financially free, because in a given year we pay about $70,000 to $100,000 in mortgage, which means that the moment that this mortgage is taken care of, you're talking we're opening up $70,000 to $100,000 worth of ministry expense, as well as just expense. Like most people that attend church, they just don't understand what it is that's happening up here, even day by day. Like one of the big parts of my former job and your current job is this building.
Yeah.
And it's like we literally are sitting in meetings most weeks where there's 5, 6, 7 things broken, and most of them we're just having to go, well, just pray about it because we can't do anything about it. Like there's something breaks, and it's like, I don't know. If we don't know someone in the church that can do it for us for free or for really cheap, I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Like we were driving in this morning, and Megan goes, "Oh man, the parking lot really needs resealed and restriped." I go, add it to the list. $15,000 because I was the one that oversaw it last time that it got done. $15,000. Go ahead. It's probably even more expensive now the way that the world is.
Yep.
Just to restripe a parking lot.
Yeah.
It's so crazy, and so we won't have to put maintenance type stuff off. We can put some of that behind us, and then, I mean, what in the world could we do with $50,000 to $100,000 in our community? I mean, it's
pretty exciting to think about it in that way. I know it's stressful and difficult over the long haul, but that's why these quarterly services and these moments like this are so important. It's just to bring it back to mind and reinvigorate that. And so you shared from the Jesus's feeding of the 5,000, which you explained is more like 15 to 20,000. But your main point from your teaching is that Jesus can do more with what you have than you can. And I think that, like, I know that we've both seen that in our lives practically at times when we've been like, well, here you go, even though we're not sure, like, how that's even going to make a difference at all. But how can we see that, like, practically in our lives? And then also, like, for this campaign, what are some ways that you really see that point there come into play?
Yeah, I've reflected on it a lot this year, just because my family is just in a different like season right now,
Mhm.
and I've just reflected on that a whole lot this year. Where I go like, there's no way I would have ever thought we would be in the situation that we're in now.
Mhm.
And even though like I have a tendency of being very ungrateful for where I am right now, because on some level it feels there's like that insecurity of like, oh well, yeah, there are people that are doing it at a bigger level than you.
Mhm.
But like to think of the opportunity to pastor a church the size of Southridge with
Mhm.
the impact in the community and the influence it's having on people.
Mhm.
I mean, I would have never thought in a million years
Yeah.
that God would do that with my life. Because I always thought my plan for my life was going to be so much better. It would get me so much further than.
Yeah.
But that was because I watched people in ministry like struggle and all
Mhm.
this, like to see people show up and have any ministry
Mhm.
success. So I thought, oh, that's just like a miserable
Mhm.
way to make a living and such. And so I never would have thought that, oh wow, like God can actually really. And again, if you're being faithful to whatever size church God's called you to, that's the goal of life.
Mhm.
God makes people responsible for all sorts of different sized projects,
Mhm.
and such. I would have never guessed by placing my life in God's hands, though, that He would have brought me where we are now
Yeah.
at all. Just in every area of life
Mhm.
that uh, if you would have talked to me in college, I had no plans of
Right.
getting married, having kids, having a career. Like I didn't really want any of that. I really was shooting pretty low um,
Mhm.
at that point, and now here I am with a beautiful family. Um, I pastored an incredible church
Mhm.
that, attendance wise is in the top 10% of the whole country,
Mhm.
which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
Um, Because if you come here, you don't think it's that big. Like you
Yeah.
just go, oh, it's
Yeah. Like a lot of people come here and they say, I thought it was going to be big, but it doesn't feel big.
yeah,
Like, and it's really,
yeah. It's
not.
just the national average for church is like
Mhm.
80 people,
Right.
so it's very very big that 350 people come here in the
Right.
summer. That's a lot of people
Mhm.
for a church, and yeah, it's the point being that whatever we put in God's hands, I mean, He's going to make so much more of it. When I decided to place my life in His hands,
Mhm.
that's what He did.
Yeah.
That's what He does, like on the life side, and then on
Mhm.
the finance side. Like I've talked about this a lot, and again, people have to realize I have to be able to share stuff like this, not to get pats on the back, but so that people
Mhm.
understand I'm not talking nonsense. Like
Right.
when we were a single income family, and that income was not a lot at all because I
Right.
worked at the church.
Mhm.
Megan stayed at home. We had two little kids. Our grocery budget every week was $50 a week to feed a family of four.
Yeah.
I still to this day have no idea
Yeah.
how in the world that was even possible. And the lead pastor of this church called me into his office and said, Scott, I don't know how, but you and Megan are in the top 25, not
Mhm.
percent, top 25 giving units
Yep.
at this church. And it was because we decided we were going to place our finances
Mhm.
in God's hands in
Yeah.
that moment whenever we had nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
we were trying to figure out how do you feed four people for 7 days with $40.
Yeah.
Plus we had a dog. Like we had to
Yeah.
buy dog food out of that.
Yeah.
$50 something. Like I don't know how we did it.
Right.
Other than I mean, yeah, we had a lot of family to like lean on and such. We
Mhm.
might pop over to grandma's house for dinner or something every once in a while.
Yeah.
But we placed our finances in God's hands from the
Yeah.
beginning, and now I won't apologize for where we're at now. I
Right.
just won't. Like I
Right.
won't sit here and try to be like, "Oh man, my life is miserable." It's not.
Right.
But that's because whenever we had nothing,
Right.
it was all His.
Mhm.
And not that I mean we're not moving to Malibu anytime soon, but now
Right.
that we're not like scraping pennies together
Right.
to go to the grocery store, I won't sit there and feel guilty for that
Right.
either.
Yeah.
Like we have trusted God in every
Mhm.
possible, and I don't say that for anyone to be like, oh man, look at no. Listen, I'm just telling you what we preach about here
Yeah.
is not just hypothetical.
Right.
It's I have lived it. If you will place it in God's hands, this is not some like prosperity level, like, oh, if
Right.
you sow a seed of $1,000, God. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, for the most part,
Yeah.
you place your finances in God's hands,
Mm-hmm.
and you will see Him make more of your life than you could ever begin
Yeah.
to imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so cool. I think I see that, like, I've seen that in our lives too. Like, the fact that my husband and I mean, we grew up, pretty poor, really. And the fact that we're where we are, I mean, we don't own a house currently because that's what we're just feeling that we're not supposed to buy a house yet. And I shared about that, a couple weeks ago in one of these podcasts. But, like, the fact that we were not in a great place financially whenever we made our commitment for the future, and but we did it, and we've been giving, and, like, we haven't missed the money, like, not in the way that we thought we would, and, like, somehow our finances are actually way better than what they were before. And I can't tell you how that is because we've not really changed a whole lot. Like, we did cut a few things out, we did do some other things, but, like, really we haven't done anything great big, like, to make that. But we just said we're going to make this commitment because this is what we believe God's telling us to do, and He's worked it out. Like, and that's just how God does things. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, that, like, not to apologize for where you are because of what God's done, like, because that's what it's not what you've done, it's what God has done with what you've given.
Yeah. No, there was
Like,
a point last week. Megan and I were on vacation with our family, and I said, it's bizarre to me that here we are on vacation, and I told her this story. I said, do you remember this story when we were our kids were really little? We had to go to the beach with my parents because we couldn't afford vacation, and we couldn't even afford, like, to be on the vacation, even though they were paying for the place. That there was a Sunday that we were at the beach. Our family got up. We went to church because that's what we do when we're on vacation. No questions asked. We're going to church 50 times a year, like 50 Sundays a year. Period. Like, somebody's going to be sick, sure. There's going to be extenuating circumstances. We got up one Sunday. We went to New Spring Church down in Myrtle Beach, and it was after church. It's like, what are we going to do? We wanted to eat out. We don't have any money to eat out. So I remember we went to Sam's Club. We went to Sam's Club after church on vacation. We're sitting there eating 78-cent hot dogs at Sam's Club. And I was telling Megan, I said, do you remember that? Like, we were on vacation. We had nothing. And so we literally had to go to Sam's Club to eat because we didn't have any money to spend on the vacation whatsoever. And I said, it's crazy to me that is that, and this time we're on vacation and, like, we can breathe a little bit. We're not gonna go home and be on zero and be like, oh my gosh, we just wrecked our whole lives in a week. Like, and again, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What I was telling her in that story was, and I said, and we don't have to sit there and feel bad about it, because the first thing that we did to start that week was send our For the Future money to the church, as well as a tithe to the church from Megan had just sold a house.
Yeah.
We sent all that at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then we go, now the rest of it, God goes, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's this idea that, like, oh, God wants us to give and just be miserable. No, that's not. You go check the scriptures about how God has blessed you to bless others, but also to enjoy His blessing in your life. And when you put Him first, like, you send that check on Sunday, then you can go and enjoy dinner on Wednesday and not feel guilty about it, because you've put God first, and now you can bless your family. Like, this is how He has set it up to be. And there was, it's not hypothetical. This is how God does things. Like I said it on Sunday, everyone is so much more concerned with what they don't have rather than what they do have. at the moment that you start getting more focused on what you do have and asking God to use what you have rather than asking him for more. Everyone's prayers when it comes to finances and resources or whatever it is, it's give me more, give me more, give me more. God is not going to do that, biblically speaking. The principle is those that can be trusted with a little will be trusted with more.
Yeah.
He is not going, like you can pray till you are blue in the face for more, but until you are faithful with whatever level he has already given you, do not expect him to give you more.
Yeah.
So don't ask him for more in your prayers. Change your prayers to use what I have, God. Okay, I don't have very much. That's fine. That little boy in the story, he didn't have very much, but God was able to use whatever it was that he brought. He was able to make something of it.
Absolutely.
That's the point of the story, is like it doesn't, God could have worked that miracle with anything that kid had.
Yeah.
That was a miracle that could take place. He just had to be willing to place it in the proper hands.
Yeah.
Once what he had was in the proper hands, then there was no end to the amount of people that could be touched by it.
Absolutely.
Like for me, that's one of the most exciting things about giving to the church. Like this coming Sunday, we're going to have, how many people have signed up for baptism?
Oh my goodness. Well, I just found out there's 8 from Recovery Point that are coming. That are wanting
8.
baptized.
I know there's
That's just
teenagers,
them.
there's kids. I think we have some other.
There's other adults. Yeah. There's, close to 20 perhaps. Like,
so if let's say conservatively 12 people get baptized Sunday, I get to say, not just because I'm the pastor of this church, because I am a giver to this church, that I got to have a part in all of that.
Yeah.
Like we talked about, I had Will and Aaliyah come up on stage last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, our 2 interns here. When Will goes and leads a church of his own, every single person that gets saved under his ministry, I get to go because, not because I'm like mentoring him or like he's interning with, no. Because I financially give for him to go through seminary and to get on-the-job training at a church, every time that someone gets saved under his ministry, I get to say, man, I had a part in that.
Yeah.
I wish, because I know so many people at the church. Like, I was thinking yesterday I'm going to walk off, I'm going to get the offering numbers, and everyone that wasn't currently involved is going to be like, yeah, we're in. And it's like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't even close to that. And it makes me not sad for the fact like, oh man, this is really going to be difficult if more people don't start saying yes. It makes me sad because those are so many people that are not going to have those stories that I just told.
Right.
They're not going to have the stories that you can tell of how God has been so faithful when you had absolutely nothing, and now look where you're at.
Yeah.
And just I can tell you so many people's stories of how God has taken care of them because they are faithful in their finances. And because they're faithful with anything that they have, they just offer it up.
Yeah.
Like I just had somebody 2 Sundays ago. They came up and they said, hey, I am off work every other Monday starting now. How many people would just go, I'm off work every other Monday, see you later?
Right.
They said, I'm off work every other Monday. I'd like to take that Monday that I'm off and come up here and do stuff at the church if I can.
Yeah.
That right there. Okay, you don't have a whole lot of time off. You don't have a lot of time in the evenings or the weekends because of your job and kids. But here's what I do have. Can you take that, God? Can you do something with that? Yeah. You learn how to do that in every area of your life. And I'm telling you, it's not prosperity gospel. This is whatever you sow, you end up reaping. This is Galatians 6. It's a biblical principle. You just keep putting the little bit that you have in the hands of Jesus.
Yeah.
And he will continue to do what it is that he does every single time with it.
Yeah.
Every single time with it. And you won't have to feel bad about enjoying your life. You will not have to feel bad about enjoying God's blessing.
Yeah.
When you put him first, that little bit of guilt that goes, oh, this would be better if I knew that I was using my resources to help others first, this would feel better on the back end whenever I take care of my family. Like that is actual freedom. And I love it. Like I have a second job. where I work for the State Church of God. While I was gone, my paycheck came for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked at it. I put it in the bank this morning. And immediately, I grabbed Megan's phone because we do all of our online giving, and grab her phone and send money to the church.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it.
Yeah.
I love it because people that are generous love talking about money. That's why if anyone was off put yesterday,
Yeah.
I will be bold enough to tell you it's
They're
simply
not generous.
because you're not generous.
Yeah.
You don't have, oh, well, you don't know my situation. No, listen,
Yeah.
I've been there, bro.
Yeah, right.
I've been there.
Yeah.
Listen, I've been there. I grew up in probably, if we were middle class, we were the bottom
Yeah.
of the middle class, maybe upper, lower
Yeah.
class. I've been there growing up. I've been there since I've been married with kids. I've been there in every single I've been there when a doctor bill comes and you're like,
Yeah.
well, this is going to collections. I've been there, okay?
Yeah.
So don't come at me
Right.
about how upset you are that we talk about. I'm not going to apologize for talking about money because I'm watching how when you put that in God's hands, how he will bless you for it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you don't have to be worried about money talks. If you're, generous people love it when we talk about money.
Yeah, because I think that, it's important to remember that whatever he's calling you to give, it may not sound like much to you or much to somebody else, but, it's that collection of all of us when we're all doing our part, when we're all giving what we have to God, then it's that core value that we have. We are better together. We know that God can do more, with whatever it is than what we can ever do on our own. I could never make an impact the way that this church does on my own.
No.
But I so into it and I get to be a part of it through that. Even before I came on staff here, being able to give and being able to go and volunteer at things and seeing the impact made, was huge to be able to be a part of that. And I think it's so important to remember that whatever it is, it's not about, we've said before, it's not about that percentage that you give. It's the percentage that you have left over, right?
Exactly.
And
it's the sacrifice.
Yes. And it's also that trust. I think that's a huge part of faith is trusting God with it. To trusting God with whatever you have left over afterwards, trusting God to be obedient in whatever he's calling you to give. It's part of one of the first, few weeks of this series that we took a break from for this week, our Rise and Fall series. We talked about not standing in the way of God's blessings. When you hold on to that, you personally are standing in the way of possibly not getting a blessing because you're holding tight to what you have. Yeah. And so your hands are not open to receive whatever that he
You're
wants
not
to
in a
give
receiving
you.
posture at all.
Yeah.
Look, my first tithes to this church were $30 a week.
Sounds
$30 a week.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And I know I was talking with someone yesterday, and they were like, well, the amount that I give just feels really insignificant, to be honest. I go,
no.
If it's sacrifice, it's not insignificant.
Yeah.
It's not the amount that you're giving. It is the amount that you are keeping.
Yeah.
That's what Jesus is looking at. So when I made $300 a week, and I was giving $30, I was living off of $270 a week. That's sacrifice.
Yeah.
That's major sacrifice.
Yeah.
It wasn't. God wasn't looking and going, $30.
Right.
That won't even keep the lights on for a day in this building. No, he was going, wow. Okay, this is somebody that will learn to live on $270 a week, so I can probably trust them with even more.
Yeah.
And so if that's you, if you're in that, I'm giving $20 a month. All right, that's not insignificant if it's sacrifice.
Yeah.
And I try to make sure I made that very clear Sunday because I'm telling you right now, some people undergive.
Yes.
And then wonder what. Well, I'm giving, but God's not blessing me. Yeah, because bro, look. If your family, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it. If your family makes $100,000 a year, and you give $3,000 to this church a year, you are not a generous person. God is not looking at you going, "Wow, great job." Yeah. It's just not. I'm sorry. I know you may have other financial things that your story may. Yeah, sure. Let's talk about it. I'm just saying in general, your family makes. Because that's what the average gift to our church is a year. It's about $3,000 a year. The annual income of a household in West Virginia is about $44,000. So even if you just went off the biblical principle of tithing, which I think is the starting point, not the ending point,
Right.
the average family should be giving about $4,400 to the church a year.
Yeah.
That's not the case. Most people are giving in the $2,000 to $3,000 range.
Yeah.
But we've also got a lot of families that are making 80, 100, 150, 200, 250 that give the same as people that are making $44,000 a year.
Yeah.
If that's not generous.
Right.
It's just not generous. There's
Yeah.
no, and do not expect, like for them, they go, well, I don't really need God to bless me because I'm already just sitting here raking in $200K
Right.
and I'm keeping 197 of it.
Yeah.
All right, but you don't get to share in the blessing
Yeah.
either. You don't get to share in the blessing at the same level of people that are truly sacrificing.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember that other blessings, like, it's not just financial. Like,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? There's so much more blessing than just finance, than just healing, than just
Yeah.
whatever. There are so many more things. And so we hope that if you've listened to this helps you. Maybe if you've been on the fence or you've been wondering, more about it and what you should give. I hope that this helps you make that decision to take that step and put God first in your finances, to give Him what you have and surrender it to Him, and watch and wait and see how He does bless you, how you do see Him just can come through in your life. But we're going to be back here again next week with another teaching and deep dive from that teaching from our Rise and Fall series, where we're going through the book of 1 Samuel, and we'll give you more practical next steps for your faith journey.
Thanks for tuning in to The Extra Point. Be sure to subscribe to the Southridge Church podcast and tune in every Wednesday for another episode of The Extra Point.